Imagine stepping into a city still carrying the echoes of war, yet quietly reinventing itself. This is London in the 1950s, a place where resilience meets transformation, where soot-stained buildings stand beside the first signs of modern life, and where every street tells a story of survival and rebirth. The decade opens with a city still visibly scarred by the devastation of World War II. Entire neighborhoods remain punctuated by bomb sites, empty lots where homes once stood, often repurposed as makeshift playgrounds or vegetable gardens, reminding residents daily of the blitz that had reshaped their lives. Yet, even amid the rubble, there is a palpable sense of determination, as Londoners, known for their stoicism, move forward with a quiet optimism, rebuilding not just structures but identity itself. The early 1950s in London are defined by austerity. Rationing, introduced during the war, continues well into the decade, with items like meat, butter, and sugar still limited until 1954. Families carefully budget their weekly allowances, queuing at local shops and markets, where conversations between neighbors form an essential part of community life. The typical household reflects modest living. Coal fires heat small terraced homes, furniture is practical rather than decorative, and clothing is often repaired and reused rather than replaced. Yet this simplicity fosters a unique culture of resourcefulness and community cohesion, where sharing and cooperation are essential parts of daily existence. Transportation plays a crucial role in shaping the rhythm of the city. The iconic red double-decker buses and black cabs dominate the streets, while the underground, already a vital artery, continues to expand and modernize. Steam trains still operate on some lines, filling stations with a mix of mechanical noise and coal smoke, creating an atmosphere that feels both industrial and historic. Cycling is common, and many Londoners walk to work, passing by a mixture of Georgian townhouses, Victorian terraces, and newly constructed council estates that symbolize the beginning of large-scale urban renewal. Architecture during this period tells a powerful story of transition. Pre-war elegance coexists with post-war necessity. The government invests heavily in rebuilding efforts, leading to the rise of functional, often stark housing developments designed to accommodate those displaced by bombing. These new estates, though lacking ornamentation, represent hope, offering indoor plumbing, electricity, and improved living conditions for working-class families. At the same time, historic landmarks like Big Ben, Tower Bridge, and St. Paul's Cathedral remain standing as symbols of endurance, having survived the war and now serving as anchors of continuity in a changing urban landscape. Economically, London in the 1950s is in recovery mode. Industry begins to stabilize and employment opportunities gradually increase. The docks along the Thames bustle with activity as goods from across the British Empire and beyond flow into the city. However, Britain's global influence is shifting, and London reflects this transition. The decline of empire coincides with the arrival of immigrants from Commonwealth countries, particularly from the Caribbean, marking the beginning of a more multicultural society. The arrival of the Empire Windrush in 1948 sets the stage for demographic changes that become more visible throughout the 1950s, bringing new cultures, music, food, and perspectives that slowly integrate into the fabric of the city. Social life in 1950s London is a blend of tradition and emerging modernity. Pubs remain central to community interaction, where men gather after work to discuss politics, sports, and daily life over pints of beer. Meanwhile, tea culture continues to thrive, with afternoon tea serving as both a social ritual and a symbol of British identity. Cinemas become increasingly popular, offering an escape from everyday struggles, while dance halls host lively evenings filled with jazz and early rock and roll. The influence of American culture begins to seep in, visible in fashion, music, and youth attitudes, signaling the early stages of a cultural shift that will define the coming decades. Fashion in the 1950s reflects both constraint and creativity. Early in the decade, clothing remains conservative and practical due to rationing, but as restrictions lift, style begins to evolve.
Women embrace elegant silhouettes inspired by designers like Christian Dior, featuring cinched waists and full skirts, while men adopt sharper suits and a more polished appearance. Youth culture starts to differentiate itself, with teenagers experimenting with new styles influenced by film stars and musicians, marking the birth of a generational identity that challenges traditional norms. Technological advancements begin to reshape daily life. One of the most significant milestones is the coronation of Queen Elizabeth II in 1953, which becomes a defining moment for the nation and a turning point for media consumption. For many families, this event is their first experience of television, leading to a rapid increase in TV ownership across London. Living rooms transform into shared viewing spaces where families gather to watch news, entertainment, and cultural programming, fostering a new kind of collective experience. Despite progress, challenges remain. The infamous Great Smog of 1952 highlights the environmental consequences of industrialization and coal usage, blanketing the city in a thick, toxic fog that leads to thousands of deaths and prompts significant public health reforms. This event becomes a catalyst for environmental awareness and legislative change, eventually resulting in cleaner air policies that will shape the city's future. Education and intellectual life continue to flourish, with institutions like universities, libraries, and museums maintaining London's status as a cultural and academic hub. Literature, theater, and the arts thrive, reflecting both the hardships and hopes of the era. The West End remains a focal point for performance, offering plays and musicals that provide both entertainment and commentary on contemporary society. As the decade progresses, a subtle but significant shift occurs. Austerity gives way to affluence, and by the late 1950s, consumer culture begins to take root. Household appliances such as refrigerators and washing machines become more accessible, transforming domestic life and reducing the burden of manual labor. Shopping districts grow busier, and advertisements begin to shape consumer desires, signaling the dawn of a more modern, consumption-driven society. The streets of London themselves evolve alongside these changes. What were once war-damaged roads gradually become busier with cars as automobile ownership increases. Traffic becomes a new feature of urban life, altering the pace and dynamics of the city. Neon signs and illuminated storefronts start to appear, adding a new visual dimension to the urban environment, particularly at night. Culturally, London in the 1950s stands on the brink of a revolution. While the decade itself is often seen as conservative, it lays the groundwork for the explosive creativity of the 1960s. The blending of traditional British values with new influences, immigration, technology, and global culture, creates a unique tension that fuels innovation and change. Through the lens of AI reconstruction, this era comes alive with remarkable detail. Imagine walking down a foggy street lined with brick houses, the sound of a distant train echoing through the air, children playing in a vacant lot where a building once stood, and a shop window displaying carefully arranged rationed goods. Picture the glow of a single television set in a modest living room, illuminating the faces of a family gathered to witness history. Visualize the gradual transformation of the skyline as cranes and scaffolding signal the rebuilding of a city determined to move forward. In essence, London in the 1950s is a city of contrasts between past and future, hardship and hope, tradition and change. It is a decade defined not by dramatic events alone, but by the quiet resilience of its people and the steady progress of reconstruction. Every street corner, every building, and every story contributes to a larger narrative of renewal, making this period one of the most significant chapters in the city's history. And as we reconstruct it through AI, we are not just recreating images, we are rediscovering the spirit of a city that refused to be defined by its past and instead chose to build its future one brick at a time.